Okay guys, so today I have a fresh take on White Forest for you, and this one actually could be really good, like potentially one of the better versions of White Forest. This is my first pass at it, so I'm going to do more testing for sure, because I think that there's maybe more to explore here. But I want to first just give you an overview of why I think this is good. Then I will show you some gameplay. I was just playing on ladder and coincidentally bumped into someone from the Discord. Also, I never read these cards by myself. I didn't even bother to read them because I thought they were a gimmick, and someone else from the Discord pointed it out to me. Speaking of which, if you want to join the Discord because you want to see like a bunch of deck lists, or you want feedback on your deck lists, or you want to participate in events, like I will be doing a event on White Forest variants only, like a tournament, and I may also do giveaways at some point. So if you're interested in any of that, you can join the description or the Discord, which is in the description below. Okay, so let me first explain why I think this is good. I'll do the gameplay, and then I'll talk about different variants that you could play here or other options for the main and extra deck. Now, there are 3 cards that make up the sub-engine, and they all have similar effects. So Sanguine Djinn cannot be destroyed by monster effects, and it's a hard once per turn. If this card is in your hand, you can place it in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous spell. While this card is a continuous spell, you can either pay 2,000 life points or reveal Millennium Ink in your hand. We're not doing that. We'll be paying the life points. Special summon this card. Then you can add a Millennium monster from your deck to your hand. So the thing that's good about this card is that this is a strict +1 that does not cost you anything. Life points is really not even really a cost. It's such an irrelevant resource. It's barely even a resource. So this is a +1 that doesn't use your normal summon, and it is a level 8, which is extremely important. So we'll get back to that in a second. Now this one is a level 6, and it is almost the same. So if this card is in your hand, you can place it in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous spell. While this card is a continuous spell, you can either pay 2,000, that's what we'll be doing, or reveal Millennium Ink. We're not doing that. Special summon this card. Then you can add a Wedju Temple from your deck to your hand. So the Sanguine Djinn and the Golem are exactly the same in terms of a free summon that doesn't use your normal and is a +1. The difference is that one is a 6 and one is an 8. Those are super relevant numbers. Now, whereas this one searches any Millennium monster, this one searches Wedju Temple. So that is the last piece, Wedju Temple. So during your main phase, you can place one monster from your hand in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous spell. Then place one Millennium monster from your deck in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous spell. And you can only use this effect once per turn. The last effect I don't think will really come up. If a face-up Millennium monsters you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can place it in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the grave. Like maybe that could come up if you're trying to force like Appaloozas or IPs or like run over them in the battle or whatever. But really, this is probably the worst one because it does have a condition in that you have to place a monster from your hand into your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. It does not conflict with the others because you can use their effects once they're there. They don't have to have placed themselves. So this is like a very coherent engine. Now, if you've watched any of my other profiles, you'll see that I like maxing out on the toy cards, so much so that not only do I play 3 soldier, I also play 1 reinforcement in the army in every build that I can fit it into. And there's a huge difference between drawing access to the toy cards or not if you have your White Forest engine available. And so these cards are similar in the sense that this deck goes up a tier. Like without these cards, just the White Forest stuff is probably like a tier 3 deck because it's really susceptible to interruptions. But with these cards, the resource game is way better. And one of the consequences of that is you can be a little bit more comfortable playing hand traps. Hand trap wars is generally not a good idea against the actual best decks, like Snake Eyes in particular, and then also Yubel. But these cards are so solid that I may consider going back to hand traps, and I may even consider cutting down Box or maybe the Wedju Temple. I'm not sure yet to fit in 2 additional hand traps. Okay, so now let's get to the gameplay, and then I'll talk about changes that you can make or other variants within the deck and extra deck. So let's go to the replays. So coincidentally, I faced a guy from the Discord in this match here, and this will show you basically the combo. So we start with Golem. So remember that they place themselves in the spell and trap zone. and then it can special itself, and this one adds the Wedju Temple. Okay, so now we've summoned that. We activate Temple. We place the Toy Soldier. Now, remember, this card actually has to be set when it's sent to the graveyard to be able to trigger. So, because we have to place a monster as a continuous spell, a face-up continuous spell, and I already have the Rota, I elected to put in the Soldier because I'm going to get another Soldier anyhow. But this is just to keep in mind that you don't actually get to trigger this unless it was sent after being set. Okay, so off of the single golem, we have brought itself out, and we have got the temple, which has got us the Sengenjin. So now the Sengenjin pays another 2k, and it can search itself or the other one. I just added a copy of itself. It doesn't really matter. They're kind of interchangeable. So now we haven't used our normal, and we have an 8 and a 6 on field. And in this particular case, I'll show you different lines as we go through this. We're just going to use the 2 bodies to go into the Wave Hiking Caesar. That's it. So we're not doing anything like fancy with these cards right now. We're just showing that with no normal summon, you can get straight to this. You don't have to play like a large Fiendsmith package, just a few cards. Okay, now I Rota for the Rail Soldier, and I go LZ, and now we're going to go for like a basic line here. So we get access to Toy Box, we summon the Rusia, we bring out the Arciela, which searches the Woes. Now we're summoning. This card gets Veilered. You know, at this point, it doesn't really matter. Like, if he had Nib, he probably would have saved the Veiler to go Nib Veiler. So I'm like, you know, he probably doesn't have, like, other hand traps at this point. Here, I search the Granite Golem because I still think that this is an absolutely phenomenal card. And unless your extra deck cannot fit this in, you should be playing this card, especially if you are able to search the Veiler off the Arciela. Like, that combo is super, super solid. And then with 2 monsters, we go into Little Knight. So one of the trends that you'll see with this variant that comes up all of the time is if you've used your Millennium monsters to go into a Wave Hiking through the Fiendsmith line, then you usually will have 2 monsters that are left at the end, and you want something else to turn them into. So this is the line without using the Crimson Dragon package. You'll see that later on. So this is super consistent where it's Diabel, it's Wave Hiking, and then it's a Little Knight, and you have Woes and whatever searched in hand, and usually some decent card economy. So the opponent draws and then surrenders because I guess he doesn't want to reveal what deck he's on. So now we go into the next game, and you can see that I have drawn basically like all different parts of my engines besides the toy stuff. And he summons the Sylvie. So if you summon Sylvie, the thing here is, right, like if you Veiler this card, so I'm not playing, right now I was not playing a hand trap version, I was playing a power spell version, that's why the thrust is here. So I'm only playing 1 Veiler and 1 Nib because I searched both in a combo. And if his hand is bad, I know that he has to pass here, or maybe he was lucky and he drew Woes and he'll still get a Silvera on my turn, but that's like fine. I can survive with that. And I don't know if he's on power spell or hand trap because it could have just been 1 Veiler to search. So I'm like, okay, if he has a bad hand or it's like clogged with random stuff or hand traps, then I'll probably win off of this single Veiler. But then he activates Stand Up, and I'm like, okay, I have lost because I have no hand traps, and all he has to do is make Calamity, and there's nothing I can do because I have no interactions. So he makes Legatia here. If he is playing Auxilla, there's no reason to make it because he already drew the Stand Up, so it's fine. And he's cycling through the combos here, and he ladders into Diabel, and he gets another Stand Up. And now he makes the Crimson Dragon, and then he makes the Cosmic Blazar. And then I'm like, wait a minute. There's a chance I can win now. So, and then after in the Discord, he said that he didn't play Calamity. But if he did Calamity me, I was just scooping, just straight up moving on to the next game. So here we start with the Golem. Because this is free, it doesn't reveal like how good the rest of my hand is. So I activate the Golem, now I activate the box. And I'm just thinking, like, I don't know what he's actually going to negate with the Blazar, and I kind of need to know, because, like, if I normal summon the Esteller and use the effect and he negates it, I probably lose. So I'm just trying to see, like, what is he going to do? I'm actually expecting that he was going to Calamity lock me here. Like, I thought that we would be dealing with a level 8 Trudea, and then another tuner, and I would get Calamity locked, and then I was just waiting at this point then again to surrender. But then he makes Diabel, so I'm like, okay, is he just not playing it? And I thrust, and he doesn't Blazar the thrust. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I have like almost no plays. My next play has to resolve. So when I see he doesn't negate this, I go for the Dark Ruler, and he drolls me, which is Honestly, this deck does not lose to Droll nearly as bad as people think it does, but in this particular instance where I have to Dark Ruler and I've gone through most of my hand, not being able to search does hurt. But I have the box, so I send a Soldier, I summon a card, I can't search off of either of them. He does Crow the Soldier, which I think... I can't remember if I was playing 3 of them, or I think I was playing 3 of them in this Power Spell version. And then I go into Silvera because I'm like, okay, I need to like at least run over these monsters or something. And I also just wanted to... I wasn't sure if I should just go for like a Little Knight or if I should try going for Fiendsmith plays and see if he has any more hand traps. So I go into the Necroquip line here, and then I'm like... I'm so far behind on card economy. The Blazar is coming back. My only chance of winning this game at this point is probably to sit on a Light and Dark Chaos Angel. So remember, the Necroquip is dark, and then I made it with a light monster. So if I can just sit on this card, maybe I can draw into like, you know, enough engine that I can play through the Blazar or make my own Blazar, and we're basically just trading Blazars, and then one of us eventually wins. But I made a huge mistake of putting my Engraver in attack position. So I banished the Diabell because I rather put the Legatia in grave, because if I put the Diabell in grave, he can just spin it back to bring out one of his tuners, whereas if I banish it, he probably can't get it back, because no one plays 2 of these. And so then I attacked the Legatia, which I needed in defense position so I could beat over it. So his Blazar comes back, and... so I already have 6,000 life points here because I only resolved one of the Millennium monsters. And here I'm just thinking, like, I probably still lose, but because he didn't Calamity me, maybe I have a chance. But he access code pops the correct card, which is Toy, because this is like a resource game. And even though he can't kill the Engraver by battle, he just attacks over it and puts me at 600. And now I'm like, okay... He has 2 win conditions now. The first is he just attacks me and I lose, or I put this in defense and he makes the White Forest synchro monsters because they gain double piercing damage off of Silvera, or he draws Imperm. So I'm like, okay, there's no way I win, but I for sure like threw this game by leaving the Engraver in attack position because like. I wasn't thinking, like, normally I don't use the Necroquip to go into the Chaos Angel, but I guess this was just straight up the wrong play and, like, a major misplay. So it really cuts down on my ability to stall. And we basically are, like, just drawing, and I'm like, he didn't, we talked about it in the Discord afterwards, but I think he didn't initially realize that he could just make Silvera or Ciela get the attack boosts, and then it doesn't matter that my Chaos Angel is in defense position, because he'll just do piercing until I die. And so we're basically just drawing until that happens. And I think we're like nearly there, so I'll let it play out so you can see. But yeah, this was ridiculous because I was like, is he not going to make the monsters? And then I'm just going to deck him out because I have more cards in my extra deck. And I still didn't really know if he was on like a hand trap version or not. Because the hand traps he used were kind of weird, like the DD Crow. So I was thinking maybe he doesn't have Imperm, you know? And then I was thinking, you know, I don't have Imperm, but maybe he doesn't know that. And that's and then I think at this point he like realizes that he can just make the level 6s with the attack boosts there. And so again, I'm just thinking like, is this really going to end in a deck out? So there's a tank putting itself to good use, and then he does the double piercing and the game ends. So now we go into game 3. And here I draw, like, so this is another of the cool things about this is that there's no problem with drawing multiples of these, really, because it's not like you don't go neg. If anything, maybe you don't plus effectively as much as you would have, because if you just drew this, then you would search the golem and the golem would plus you, but like it's not strictly neg, you know? And like also if they use some kind of interaction on it, at least you have like the follow-up in hand. So I don't think I really mind drawing multiples of them, but you know, it's not like as efficient. And I realized like he's probably not on a heavy hand trap build after everything played out in the end. And so I think this is a mistake of showing both engines in my hand. I probably should have just shown just the Millennium stuff and like gone straight into wave hiking again, or started with the White Forest stuff and do that after. But I was just play testing here, so and I also wanted to try a different line. So I mentioned that the levels are really important, the 8 and the 6, and this is what you're gonna see here. So I start laddering through the standard stuff, and I get access to the woes. I make the Diabel. I add back what was in the grave. And at this point, I can go into the Legatia. So I use the Rusia, which is a tuner, and the Sangenjin, which is a non-tuner, and I make the Legatia, which gives me a draw. It doesn't matter what the draw is, but I get another Sangenjin. And now I can bring back out my Sylvie, because I had the Arciela engrave, which I was laddering through. I make the Silvera. So here's the cool thing, right? This is why I was saying that the levels really matter. So the Sangenjin was an 8. So the 8 and the level 4 tuner go into a 12. So that's the Legatia. But then the 6 and the 6, so the Silvera, which is a tuner, and the Golem, which is a non-tuner, those go into Crimson Dragon. And so the reason that I was saying that I almost prefer not playing Calamity in this version is that you usually have the Legatia on field that is not going to do anything, because you're not playing Centurion cards. There's nothing for this to place in the graveyard into your spell and trap zone. And so he surrenders here, but the thing that makes this relevant is you see that I have the Silvera engrave that I just used as material. So I could just shuffle it back with one of these tuners, and then I would have the 2 bodies that are required to do the full Fiendsmith combo. Let me actually see if I left a replay where I showed that. Because I was just testing out in a vacuum without playing against anyone. And no, this one is just going straight into the Fiendsmith stuff. Let's see if I do it here. One of the cool things you'll notice, by the way, looking at these hands, is that the math is like almost guaranteed that you're going to see either the toy engine or the Millennium engine. And that's really cool, because it wasn't like that before. And that was one of the main reasons to play Prosperity. And then if you were on like a large Fiendsmith package, it was so hard like to resolve Prosperity without hurting. You'd only really be able to banish 3, and then you still have to rely on a little bit of luck. So I didn't really like that. But now it's like you don't have to play Prosperity, because you actually do have such good cards. Here again is the setup. So you are laddering into the Diabel, you have the Legatia, and you want to make the Silvera, so you have a level 6 tuner and a level 6 non-tuner in the Golem. So that is standard. And you make the Crimson Dragon, and now again, here's what I'm talking about. This is why I feel like maybe Calamity, obviously you can Calamity, and Calamity is broken, and it's probably going to be, if it's better or not will be dependent on the deck that you're facing. But here I make the Granite Golem. Because I was skipping through this, I didn't check to see if I searched the Veiler off the Arciela or if I hard drew it. But the Nib and Veiler, not only is it always solid, as I say in most of my videos, but it plays super well with the Blazar too, because naturally you would just have Blazard first, and then the Blazar is banished. And so it doesn't interfere with your Nib or Veiler. And then if you're nibbing your own Diabel or whatever, it still doesn't matter, because it's just fodder in the grave to be recycled for your tuners to come out. So all of these cards work super well together. So here I bring out the Cosmic Blazar Dragon, and now you'll notice that I have a Cosmic Blazar. So this does something on my opponent's turn. I have a Diabel. This does something on my opponent's turn. The Granite has been used and the Legatia has been used. So these do nothing, and they are 2 monsters. And 2 monsters is Closed Heaven, which is Requiem, which is Engraver, brings out the Requiem, makes a Necroquip, brings back out the Requiem, and then we make the Wave Hiking Caesar. So the cool thing here is that, like, normally a typical end board is the Diabel, the Blazar, and then either the Wave Hiking or the Little Knight, based on the order in which you sequenced your plays. And the other cool thing about this is that these cards help you make similar end boards to the toy engine. So it's not like you're putting a bunch of conflicting pieces in that make it harder to do one thing consistently. Because normally when you build a deck, you want to do the same exact thing over and over again. So yeah, now let me bring up the deck again. And one like important thing to note here is if I just bring up some of the rank 6 cards, so XYZ, and this will be 6 and 6. There are some decent level 6s in the game. M7 is there for some of the Fiendsmith lines with Necroquip, but I'm not playing that. I don't think it's necessary. Lars is pretty solid because the level 6s don't have any requirements. It's just any 2 level 6s. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can attach 2 materials from this card. Then target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of the turn. So this is almost the same thing as like Dies Irae, except you only get to choose 1 thing instead of normally 2 because it's equipped with Sequentia, or it's called Sequence now. That's an option. This card, I feel like, is maybe like a more budget alternative. So it's 2 plus level 6 monsters. Once per turn, you can target a spell or trap on the field, detach 2 materials from a monster's on the field. So it can be itself, it can also be your opponent's monster or another monster you control. And if you do, attach that target to this card as material. I thought of this because the 10 by matchup is weird, and if you can just steal their field spell, or you wait until they activate it and then you steal it, like that's pretty solid. And then this has another weird effect where if this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, and then you can, so this is optional, attach a goblin monster from your graveyard to this card as material. So it does have like some floating ability to go into like an SP or an Appaloosa, or, you know, maybe like a Fiendsmith play. Not this one. So this card could also be interesting depending on, I don't know, your locals or whatever. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell or a trap card, you can detach a material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. I'm just showing these to show that there are like a couple other options. I think realistically, one of the better ones is probably Wallow if you were going to play a rank 6. Or if you wanted to do like a Beatrice line, obviously you can very easily make Beatrice. I'm kind of expecting that card is going to be banned. So this one has a quick effect where you can target a card in your opponent's graveyard. So it doesn't have to be a monster, it's any card. And then you detach 1 material if you want to return it to the deck, or 2 materials if you want to special summon it face up as a monster, or face down actually. So this card is like pretty solid, but it never really had like a super good deck that played it consistently all the time. Now I don't want to make this video too much longer, but obviously if you have this much space for hand traps, you can also play a power spell build, in which case I love Thrust, Dark Ruler for sure. As the bare minimum, those 2 cards, Thrust and Dark Ruler. The other stuff you can debate if you want to squeeze in the space in your extra deck for Super Poly, if you want to main evenly matched. But the Thrust pairs really well with your Woes and your Tails. I think that the Bestials are great options if you are going to be playing hand traps, because they are better for card economy and they're also level 6s. So it helps you go into like Crimson Dragon, or if you were going to play more rank 6s, it would help with that. They also are darks to go into a Chaos Angel. I think Dispatter, I'm not really sure. I don't think it makes sense to play this card just because you have a few Bestials, because you have to hard draw them to be able to access this card. But because you're playing Crimson Dragon, you could argue that, you know, like you make Chaos Angel and you Crimson Dragon the Chaos Angel and bring out the Dispatter. So like, you know, maybe you could play it. Ready Rose is situational, but this and Vorp Gate are useful against Yubel or, you know, some other decks too. So those are some things to consider. I'm not sure what my final ratios are going to be. I think I need to do more testing, but this is a pretty good palette if you want to start testing this version of the deck. If there's something that I haven't figured out yet, let me know in the comments below if there's anything else that you can do with these cards or any other interactions that you've thought of. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.